Good morning, everyone. It's good to be here, good to see the new building, good to break in the stage. Hopefully, yeah, this one seems a lot better than the last one. But yeah, trust me, last one I'll jump up, down, good. I was like, oh, please don't break on me. But yeah, it's good to be here, good to see you all smiling faces. In case you don't know, I am Ben Nichols. My wife Jackie's in the back there with my son, little Benji. His named after me. Don't know why we would torture him that way, but we decided to do that. If you'd like to say hi, go ahead. Just please keep your distance from him. Try to keep him as healthy as possible. But we are glad to be here. And in case you don't know me, one thing I love is musical instruments, obviously. I love playing them. I love collecting them. I like just learning new different instruments. And I don't know how many of you remember when I was here before and I did like a Noah sermon. I had my little ukulele up here. I was dressed as Noah, and I did that. And so you may be thinking, well, what's he going to do with this? Well, growing up, I loved Weird Al. I don't know if you know who he is, but he is a comedian, does parodies for songs. I like to laugh a lot, so he always played the accordion. That was his instrument. And I was like, man, I want one. Man, I want one. And then finally, at college, there was a yard sale and had this for $50. And that was a steal, all right? So I got it in college. I would play until my roommate said, you know what, you're not allowed to play that thing when I'm in this room. So I was like, okay, that's fine. So whenever he would leave the room, I'd be out there learning how to play it and everything. And then so today, I was like, you know what, I'm going to bring it to you. So I have something for you, and this is what I'm going to do. It's a relief to some and disappointing to others, right? Yeah. Today I want to talk to you about disappointment. Life has a way in things that sometimes we get disappointed. I know with this year, for how crazy it's been, a lot of plans have been canceled, postponed to who knows when. Things in life can get pretty disappointing. There you go. The definition of disappointment is sadness or displeasure caused by the non-fulfillment of one's hopes or expectations. Now, maybe when you're here, you saw me with this. You heard Ashley. By the way, thanks for calling me cute. I appreciate that. I appreciate that. Haven't heard that ever. But you may have thought, oh, he's got the accordion. Your eyes saw one thing. You're like, oh, he's going to play it. Oh, he's going to play it. He's going to play it. And then you were disappointed because your eyes didn't have the fulfillment it thought. I never said I was going to play it. I just wanted you to see it. There's strings that I'm afraid I'm going to trip over and face plant. See if the stage can hold that. But today we're going to be talking about a guy in the Bible who dealt with a lot of disappointment. And I was like, Jesus deals with a lot of disappointment, but I don't want to talk about, well, I'm going to talk about him because we're in church. But we're going to be learning from Moses and how he dealt with disappointment. But before we go to that, let's open with a word of prayer. Dear Heavenly Father, thank you for another day of life you have given us. Thank you for this opportunity that we can be here to worship you, to glorify you through songs, through offering, through your word. Please be the words that I speak. Help it so I can listen to it as well. It's in your Son, Jesus Christ's name we do pray. Amen. Now, normally when we go about Moses, we think, okay, go back to the Old Testament, to the book of Exodus, but not today. Today, we're going to be learning about Moses through the eyes of Stephen. Now, Stephen, we can see in Acts chapter 7 that he was a man full of God's grace and power. He did great wonders and miracles, but some opposition arose, and people didn't like his message about Jesus. So they tried to trap him. Go figure, right? A bunch of times we can see that when people rose up in the Bible, people would try to trap him. They tried to trap Jesus multiple times. Even today, believe it or not, there are some people in the world who try to see, oh, you're a preacher, let me test his knowledge. They try to trap preachers. They took Stephen to the synagogue to try to trap him. And they brought up people and gave false accusations against Stephen, and Stephen just kind of sat there. And when it was time for Stephen to speak, all eyes were on him. They're like, oh, we got him now. What's he going to say? Well, in Acts chapter 7, we see he starts talking about Abraham, then Joseph. And eventually in verse 20, he starts talking about Moses, which is what we would pick up today. So Acts chapter 7, starting verse 20. At that time, Moses was born, and he was no ordinary child. For 3 months, he was cared for by his family. When he was placed outside, Pharaoh's daughter took him and brought him up as her own son. Moses was educated in all the wisdom of the Egyptian and was powerful. Get this. Stephen says he was powerful in speech and action. All right, keep that in mind. He was powerful in speech and action. When Moses was 40 years old, he decided to visit his own people, the Israelites. He saw one of them being mistreated by an Egyptian. So he went to his defense and avenged him by killing the Egyptian. Moses thought that his own people would realize that God was using him to rescue them. But they did not. The next day, Moses came upon two Israelites who were fighting. He tried to reconcile them by saying, "Men, you are brothers. Why do you want to hurt each other?" But the man who was mistreating the other man pushed Moses aside and said, "Who made you ruler and judge over us? Are you thinking of killing me just as you killed the Egyptian yesterday?" When Moses heard this, he fled to Midian, where he settled as a foreigner and had 2 sons. Moses, he tried to help. He tried to do his best. He saw that one of his own was being mistreated. Now, he grew up as one of Pharaoh's own. He grew up in one of the palaces, if you will. And he had it good. He had all the spoils of an Egyptian could, as of a king could. But then he risked it all, said, "You know what? They were being mistreated. Let me go help them." He risked it all and helped them and thought, okay, they're going to be happy. But instead, they actually rejected him and said, "Get out of here. We don't want you." Can you imagine that disappointment Moses would have felt? He tried doing his best for somebody just to have them reject him. He was disappointed. And maybe you have felt that way with someone too. You thought, I'm going to help this person. I see they need help. I'm going to do my best to help them. You go, you do a lot for somebody. And then they end up saying, "Why are you here? What are you doing? You just made things, why? It didn't help me at all for you being here. Get out of here. I don't want your help." And that's disheartening because you have this willingness to help someone, but then disappointment comes. Maybe it could have come with a friend who stabbed you in the back. Maybe it was a family member who doesn't treat you as family. Maybe it was a past partner who you thought, man, this one could be the one, but they thought otherwise. Plans change. Disappointment happens. Sometimes people let you down. When I was like 9 or 10 years old, all right, we had this pond. It was one of those ponds like you buy at Walmart. You get it, you bury it in the ground. We had a big one and then a little one that would stream down. And it must have been an off season when we didn't have any fish because the pond was drained. And I was out there probably kicking the soccer ball, and I saw this little frog. He was trapped in there. He was just hopping around, trying to get up, couldn't get down. And so 10-year-old self was like, I'm going to save him, all right? So I wasn't going to touch him. That's disgusting. But I got this 2x4, and I stuck it down there so he could crawl up. Now, when I stuck it down there, he was a little terrified, so he wouldn't do it as I was watching him. So I was like, okay, I'm going to go inside. I'm going to periodically check up on him. So I went inside, I look out the window, I see the little froggy hop on the base, like, oh, he's going to make it. He knows what he's doing. He would hop up, I'm like, oh, good, he's going to make it. He'd hop up, and eventually I forgot about him for about 10 minutes. I went and get a sandwich or something, I don't know. And I go back, and his little froggy back legs are like this. They're like really moving. But the problem was he wasn't moving. Because as I made my way looking up, his little hind froggy legs was going this, but his rest of the froggy face was trapped in the snake's mouth. And little me, I was like, I was so distraught. I was so upset. I cried over a frog. I don't know why. But I was like, man, I did so much. I tried to help him. And what does he do? He gets eaten by a snake. Like, I was so upset. I was so disheartened. I was very disappointed. And now that was just a frog that disappointed me. But when it's somebody, when it's a person, especially if it's someone you care about, when they disappoint you, you tend to think, oh man, how dare they? But it's how we react to our disappointment is whether we please God or not. So how did Moses react with his disappointment? Well, when we read, he fled. And you think, well, that's not a very brave thing to do. But that's not how he reacted to his disappointment. See, if we go back to Exodus, we can see he only fled because Pharaoh heard what he did and wanted Moses killed. He wanted Moses dead. And so that's why Moses fled. We don't see how Moses reacted to his disappointment until later. In fact, it was years later, 40 years later, we see how Moses reacted to his disappointment. So continuing on in Stephen's speech, chapter 7, verse 30. After 40 years had passed, an angel appeared to Moses in the flames of a burning bush. in the desert near Mount Sinai. When he saw this, he was amazed at the sight. As he went over to get a closer look, he heard the Lord say, I am the God of your fathers, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Moses trembled with fear and did not dare to look. Then the Lord said to him, take off your sandals, for the place where you are standing is holy ground. I have indeed seen the oppression of my people in Egypt. I have heard their groaning, and I have come down to set them free. Now come, I will send you back to Egypt. This is the same Moses they had rejected with the words, who made you ruler and judge? He was sent to be the ruler and deliverer by God himself to the angel that appeared to him in the bush. See, Moses responded through his disappointment by going back to the people who disappointed him. By going back, he could have said no. Moses could have said, God, why would you want me to go back there? Those people, they don't want me. They mistreated me. They told me to get away. The people here in Midian, they love me. I got a wife. I got 2 kids. I got a father-in-law who trusts me with his flock. Nobody here hates me. Why would I go back there, God? He doesn't do that. Instead, Moses says, all right, I'll go back. Moses dealt with his disappointment by going back to the people who disappointed him. I don't know about you, but I've had some people in my life who disappoint me, and there are days I'm like, why would I help them? Why would they deserve my help? They've hurt me, they disappoint me time after time again. But God tells us to love everyone, to go back and show his son to everyone. Moses dealt with disappointment just like us, but he always followed God, and so should we. Now we know what happens. Moses, he goes back to Pharaoh and he says, Pharaoh, let my people go. And Pharaoh says, no. Moses, again, Pharaoh, let my people go. No. Pharaoh, let my people go. No. You know what, Moses? Here's what I'm going to do. Not only am I not going to let them go, but I'm going to make their work all the harder. I'm going to take all the straw and watch them make bricks now. And then after that, the people were like, Moses, are you kidding us? We told you we didn't want you. He said no. Why don't you just go? We don't want you. Don't you get it? You made our lives worse by the no. And no, you should have gotten the idea the first time, Moses. But Moses said, I'm following God. Don't we get disappointed when we hear the word no? I don't know about you, but I do. Maybe you go to your boss and say, hey, can I get a raise? No. Your children ask you for a forwarding allowance because you know the new PS5 is coming out and the new video game system's coming out that all their other friends are getting. Can they just have a little bit extra money? And you as parents maybe have a smile on your face, but like, no. And you just see the disappointment drain from their face. Maybe after a long day's work, your neck is sore and you go and you're like, honey, can you give me a neck massage? Honey, oh, you're asleep? Guess that's no. We don't like hearing the word no. We get disheartened. We get discouraged. And usually when we hear the word no, we think, well, they must not appreciate us. Well, why should I do my best at my work? Why should I give the company 110%? Why should I come in early and leave late if they don't care about me, if they just want to discourage me and not give me the raise that I deserve? Or kids think, if my parents would give me the allowance, why should I make my bed every morning? I mean, why should I have to take the dust from the floor into the trash can when underneath the rug works fine? That was me, by the way. Why should we try, sometimes we think, in our marriage if our spouse doesn't seem to always show us the love that we think we need? When we hear the word no, we get discouraged, we get a little angry, and we stop trying. But if you know Colossians 3, you know that's not what we ought to do. Colossians 3, 23 through 24, whatever you do, work at it with all your heart as working for the Lord and not for human masters. Since you know that you will receive an inheritance from the Lord as a reward. It is the Lord Christ you are serving, not anyone else. As a Christian, we are serving God. We are not serving our bosses, our parents, our spouses, but God himself. And we ought to do our very best to please him because he will give us a raise that no one else can. He will give us a forward and allowance that no one else can. He will give us the comfort that no one else can. He has a place there for us in heaven that's more glorious and more wonderful than anybody else can give us. So it's him that we should seek the yes from. His ideals that we should apply to our hearts and always continue on. Even though people disappoint us, doesn't mean we stop working. Now I'm sure Moses, after hearing no, time and time again, he did not take pleasure in watching all the plagues come in. He didn't be like, oh no, okay, here, frogs. He didn't have a smile on his face when he said gnats, because he saw the people's misery. Even some of the Israelites had to deal with the misery of these plagues. Moses was like, oh, Pharaoh, I wish you would have said yes. You're going to regret that. And eventually, Pharaoh did. The loss of Pharaoh's son. Moses dealt with disappointment. We deal with disappointment. But Moses always followed God, and so should we. Even when we hear the word no. Time and time again. Continuing on in Stephen's speech in Acts chapter 7. This is after Moses led the Israelites out. He led them out of Egypt and performed wonders and signs in Egypt at the Red Sea. And for 40 years in the wilderness, this is the Moses who told the Israelites, God will raise up for you a prophet like me from your own people. He was in the assembly in the wilderness when the angel who spoke to him on Mount Sinai and with our ancestors, and he received living words to pass on to us. But our ancestors refused to obey him. Instead, they rejected him, and in their hearts, they turned back to Egypt, therefore ultimately rejecting God. All Moses went through, 40 years growing up in the palace, just to give it all away to help someone, just to get disappointed. 40 years with a new life, new ways, new wife, new kids, just to say, hey, Moses, go back, just to hear the words no and get disappointed again. And for another 40 years in the desert, Moses was there with the people who grumbled, who complained against him. Talk about disappointment. All his life, he went to serve God. And time again, disappointment came up. And see, Moses, he was human. And he lost his temper. He had a short fuse. The people were saying, hey, Moses, it's hot out here in the desert. Give us water. Moses, come on, we're thirsty. Give us water. Did you lead us out here just to die, Moses? Give us water. Moses talked to God, and God said, if they want water, speak to this rock, and water will flow from it. So Moses, he got back, and the people were still, Moses, we need water, we need water. And Moses, he took his staff and said, you want water? This is my phrasing. You want water? He smacked the rock and said, get it yourself. And that was not what God said. God said, speak to it. Calm words. Be nice. Show my love and careness. But Moses took matters into his own hands and said, there. And at that time, God said, you know what, Moses? You disobeyed what I said. You will not go into the promised land. After 120 years, Moses living his life for God, giving everything he could, losing all he had in Egypt, leaving his family behind just to get disappointed again. After all that, not to be able to see the promised land, to die in the desert. Disappointment for sure. But what about Stephen? Remember, Stephen's the one who's doing this speech. So Stephen, he is concluding in verse 52. He says, was there ever a prophet your ancestors did not persecute? They even killed those who protected the coming of the righteous one, Jesus. And now you have betrayed and murdered him. Jesus. They betrayed him. They laughed at him. They whipped him. They killed him. But he didn't just stay dead. He arose, showing he had victory over death. Showing that Jesus never disappoints. He never disappoints. His death, if he was dead, well, then everything he spoke about was nothing. But no, he was the Son of God. He was the ultimate sacrifice. He does not disappoint. And when the crowd heard Stephen say this, oh, they lost it. They said, oh, this can't be. They took him, they dragged him outside, and they started grabbing stones and stoning him to death. To death. Stephen was getting pelted by rocks left to right. And I would have thought, well, I hope you don't mind, but he's going to judge you one day. Prepare for the coming of the Lord as he gets hit by rocks. But instead, when every rock starts coming at him, he doesn't pass judgment. He doesn't do that. Instead, he does this. Lord, do not hold this sin against them. And he died. To death, Moses and Stephen always followed God to death. We see in the Old Testament that it's talked about Moses. His eyesight was as clear as day up until his death. He never lost eyesight, physically and spiritually, I like to say. He could have said, you know what, if these people don't like me, if I can't go to the promised land, God, find yourself a new prophet, I'm done. He could have said that, but he still helped them. He still helped them along with their journey to death. Moses dealt with disappointment. Stephen dealt with disappointment just like us. But they always followed God, and so should we. Even though people disappoint us, even though we hear the word no, even though we see throughout our entire life, we may think, where's my prize here, God? Our prize isn't here. It's in heaven. God never disappoints. Now, I don't know about you, but I love that God doesn't disappoint. I love that he's always there. He gives us what we need. Not what we think we need, but what we actually do need. And we have a hymn decision after services that we always invite people to say, hey, you know what, if you believe in Jesus, if he came, if you know he came, you believe in him, you want to confess him as your Lord and Savior, repenting of your old life and giving to him through the waters, to being cleansed anew, to live a life on a side that won't disappoint. We have a hymn decision that we ask that you can come up and talk to me, talk to one of the leaders. Or maybe if you said, you know, I've already become a Christian, but man, you just have been disappointed, and you said, you know what, if God's doing this for my life, why should I follow him? And you start slipping away. You start going back away from him. But then you realize, you know, that's disappointing God. And you want to get your life back on track. I want to encourage you to come as we sing our closing song. But I want to leave you with this. I know a lot of people that say, you know what, I want to give my life to Christ, I want to rededicate it, but I'm going to wait a week. I'm going to wait a week for the real preacher to show up, not this makeshift guy. I'm going to wait a week because, you know, my family will be in town then. They can see me do it. I'm going to wait a week for this. I'm going to wait a week for that. But this is how it sounds to God. If I tell my wife, Jackie, that I was going to buy her a diamond necklace, all right? I say, I have all the cash here. We're going to Elizabeth City today, right next to all the jewels. They're open. I'm going to buy your diamond necklace. She's like, oh, I'm going to get a diamond necklace. I'm like, we're going to pick out whichever one you want. She's like, oh, I'm going to get my own dream choice. As high of a price you want. Oh, yes, I'm going to get trillions of dollars worth. Nah, I don't know necklaces. But she's so excited. She's getting all excited for this. I'm like, are you ready? She's like, yeah, wait a week. How disappointed would my wife be if I told her to wait a week? Take that but multiply it by 100. That's how disappointed God is when we tell him, wait a week. Wait a week before I come and serve you. Wait a week. I'm ready now, but you know, just wait a week. That's how disappointed God is when we tell him to wait. He's waiting all the time for everyone. He doesn't want any sinner to be lost. He's always waiting for us. But when we tell him, wait a week, can't imagine him being like, okay, that's good. I'm sure he's like, oh, man, I could use you today. I could have used you yesterday. He's ready for you to make that choice today. So Ashley's going to come up and help. Well, he's going to sing. I'm not. You're welcome. To help sing our closing hymn. And if you have a decision to make, please.